think he wants to make a deal with me. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds. Just sit down. Sit down, everybody.
Okay.
I think we'll let the press come in for a minute.
Yes, I don't know if you caught this yesterday, but that's President Trump on a hot mic hinting that he believes Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to come to the table to make a peace deal with him. You're looking live at the White House this morning, where the president just hosted Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and several European leaders. NewsNation's Libby Dean has more from the White House. Libby, good morning to you. The president also saying we could soon see a trilateral meeting between the United States, Russia, and Ukraine. Any word on a timeline with that?
Yeah, good morning, Markie. It really seems like we're one step closer here to seeing President Trump, Russia's President Putin, and Ukrainian President Zelensky sitting down face to face to talk this out, talk about a peace deal. That fresh momentum, though, towards this sit down actually comes after that incredibly high stakes and high profile Monday here at the White House, where we saw hours of discussion between President Trump, Zelensky, as well as those European allies who were also here at the White House. Now, President Trump posting at the conclusion of Monday's meeting that it was, quote, very good. It was a very good early step for a war that has been going on for almost 4 years. That was the president's message. And President Zelensky also seeming hopeful after yesterday's Oval Office session. It went much smoother than February's sit down that we saw.
We don't have any day. We just conformed after this productive meeting with the president and then with all our colleagues, with the partners, we confirmed that we are ready for a trilateral meeting. And if Russia proposed to President of the United States bilateral, and then we will see the result of bilateral, and then it can be the trilateral.
Now, some of those in the room yesterday say the goal is to have President Putin and Zelensky meet face-to-face in the next 2 weeks. But, Markie, right now we don't have a location for that just yet, but it's something that we'll be following here at the White House today as we've got this press briefing coming up as well.
All right, Libby Dean live from the White House. Thank you. Joining me now is foreign policy expert Joel Rubin. He was also former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State during the Obama administration. Joel, good morning to you. The tone and tenor yesterday was a total 180 from February's Oval Office meeting. I don't know what, realistic expectations or outcomes you had in mind, but did you view yesterday as a success?
Yeah, Markie, it's great to be with you. And it absolutely was 180 degrees different from the last time they met in the Oval Office. Thank God, because that was an embarrassment for the country. And I think President Zelensky and President Trump both have learned that neither of them see their interests advanced with a contentious meeting like that. So, yes, I do have some hope because the meetings yesterday were strong. But you don't really know what you're going to get. And that's the real problem right now with the diplomacy. One day a meeting with Putin for President Trump. It looks like he's aligned with Putin. Now it looks like he's aligned with the Europeans and Zelensky after meeting with them. I don't quite know which day we're going to get a Donald Trump that really explains exactly what the American objective is in these negotiations.
And he now says he's setting up a meeting between Zelensky and Putin first, as Libby was just saying, then there could be that trilat between the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. What are the chances Putin actually sits down with Zelensky, you think?
Well, photo op diplomacy is just not enough. And, for Vladimir Putin, he got what he wanted. He got his bilateral meeting last Friday. He got the red carpet treatment. And he doesn't really need to be from his perspective, sitting on a stage next to Volodymyr Zelensky, who he views as a junior partner. And so I think he'll probably string this along. He's stringing along the idea of a ceasefire. He's rejected it after Zelensky agreed to it. And for President Trump, a meeting in and of itself should not be the goal. The meeting should be a place where a deal is constructed and finalized, not just met for a photo op. And I fear that that's what he's looking at, is the photo op rather than the actual agreement that needs to be agreed to in such a venue.
Yeah, and we all saw the photos that the White House released yesterday of Trump calling Putin from the Oval Office, kind of updating him on how the meeting went, possibly setting the groundwork for a face-to-face. What happens, though, if Putin pulls out of that meeting? Where does that leave us and the cards we can play next?
Quite frankly, President Trump has given up a lot of the cards. And, Vladimir Putin, he should feel good right now that all the pressure that he was potentially facing over the last several weeks that President Trump spoke about, all of that has diminished and disappeared because of his meeting with President Trump. And so I think that President Trump now, he should look around and decide what leverage he wants to create to try to keep Putin on a short leash. He took away the idea of more sanctions. That's a problem. He needs to keep the pressure up. Clearly, the Europeans understand the risk here. That's why they came. I have to be very direct about it. They didn't come because they wanted to support President Trump. They came because they were concerned about President Trump and wanted to support President Zelensky. And so President Trump, he needs to reassert some more pressure if he really wants to get the end goal of ending this war.
And we know that in Alaska on Friday, Putin said that he will not agree to a ceasefire deal. He's now reportedly refusing to directly negotiate with Ukraine. Of course, we'll see where things head next. And then, Russia struck Kharkiv ahead of this White House meeting yesterday. It killed 10 people. Does that tell you everything that we need to know about Putin and where he stands on actually desiring peace?
Well, it's been a long 3+ years of Putin demonstrating who he really is. He launched this invasion. He has been relentlessly attacking civilian areas in Ukraine. We heard President Zelensky yesterday speak about the humanitarian crisis. There were thousands of Ukrainians have been stolen and taken into Russia. I don't think we should have any illusions about Vladimir Putin. He has not changed his actions on the ground one bit since President Trump came into office.
And last question before I let you go Joel. Of course, Zelensky has said land swaps are a non-starter for me. You had the German chancellor who say Ukraine should not be giving up any of its own land to Russia. But then, during the weekend interviews, you had Secretary of State Marco Rubio say both sides are going to have to give up something here. Should Ukraine be willing to cede any of its territory to stop the bloodshed?
Markie, it's the perfect question. Oh, look, in theory, that makes sense at a sort of what we call a meta level. But on the ground, what Russia is seeking is actually land it does not control. It wants Ukraine to hand over key spots in its east that Russia can't get militarily. And so we're a long ways off there. I think that means a realistic assessment of on the ground what has been captured, what has not been able to be captured, and to make those trade-offs. But, Vladimir Putin, again, he's in this for all of Ukraine. He's in this for the long run. That's why the question of American security guarantees is so important to Ukraine, because they're deeply concerned about the reality that Vladimir Putin doesn't stop after he gets a little bit of land, sort of a grab an inch, and he wants to take a mile.
Yeah, I'm reading. It brings to mind if you give a mouse a cookie, which I read to my daughter, just about weekly at this point. What do they want next? Well, he's long coveted areas in the east and south. We'll see what comes next in these negotiations. Joel Rubin, thank you so much for your time as always. See you next time.
Thanks, Markie.